Good morning, Tony.
Ah, good morning. I am here.
You are.
Yeah. I was confused when I got that message for 10:30. I thought, am I supposed to be in Pemberton? But I see that I see Sal's.
We're just waiting for Vivian.
Okay. Well, she's got a long way to go.
I talked to her this morning, so I know she's home.
I'm trying to do everything all on one screen today. Yeah, it works. There we go. Except I need it closed.
She'll be right with us.
Thank you.
Morning. Apologies for being late.
Good morning. Okay, we're all here. So let's call this meeting to order, and we would like to recognize that collectively we are on the unceded territories of all the First Nations within our regional boundaries. Can I have an approval of the agenda? Approved by Vivian, seconded by Tony. Moved, seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Consent agenda. Could I have somebody move the consent agenda? Moved by Tony, seconded by Vivian. Moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Yes, Sal?
I wanted to pull 3.21.
3.21. Okay, the select funds report.
Yeah, I got a minor change there.
Okay, Kristen, where do we want to put that?
That suits me too, Sal. I've got some housekeeping on that page.
So we've already passed the motion. So we're going to have to rescind the motion that was just passed and then repass it with removing that item, please.
I'll move to rescind the most recent motion.
Can't we just call Suzanne about those things? Just. No, that might be just as effective.
Through the chair, that's certainly an option that's available to all of you to do. She'd be happy to accommodate that.
Okay, I'll be fine.
You all right with that? Okay,
Yeah.
Then we'll leave it as is.
I'll withdraw my motion to rescind.
Very good, thank you. Okay, business arising from the minutes. I don't believe there is any. Staff reports and other business. CAO verbal update.
Thank you, Chair. Just one thing I wanted to mention this morning is this will be my last EAD meeting as the CAO with the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District, and I would like to thank all of you for the opportunity to work with you in my current capacity, and will do everything I can to ensure a smooth transition and continue to support the regional district and all of yourselves. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Melanie. Appreciate those comments.
Thank you, Melanie.
We look forward to seeing you in the future in some capacity, I hope. Information report, civic addressing signage. Do we have staff for that, Kristen?
Sorry, Chair. Can we have a motion to receive 5.1, please?
Okay, motion received. Moved and seconded. Call question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have staff speaking to 5.2?
Yes, we do, Chair. I will admit Director Needham and Ms. Katerniak.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning. You're muted, Kim.
Hi.
Morning.
Now you are. Yeah. So who's, somebody's going to give us an update on this report?
Sorry, is this the civic addressing report that you're referring to, Chair?
Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah, Anna will be giving an update on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Thanks, Director. Good morning. This item provides information on the feasibility of distributing standardized civic address signage and the status of existing SLRD mapping data that pertains to roadways. So for some background information, the SLRD currently regulates civic address signage material sizing and placement through their signage bylaw number 1611/2020, as well as building bylaw number 1124/2009 that requires that a civic address be placed during construction. So in order to get a better idea of the route that can be taken to implement standardized signage, nearby communities were contacted. The Thompson-Nicola Regional District operates in ways very similar to the SLRD and has given us very valuable feedback on their system. So what they did at the TNRD is that a $15 fee was added to the fee section of their building bylaw. And this fee is meant to cover the cost of production of a civic address sign. This fee has since doubled, and that means the TNRD will have to amend their building bylaw to update this fee. And so all new building permit applicants are encouraged to get this standardized sign and to pay this fee or install a standard compliance sign as a condition of their occupation certificate. And it should be noted here that the SLRD building bylaw does not currently have this condition for the issuance of an occupancy certificate. So how feasible is this for the SLRD? Implementation of standardized signage can be achieved at the SLRD by amending our building bylaw to account for additional fees that can be if the applicant chooses to order such a standardized signage be added to their building application fee, as well as amending our building bylaw to add some stricter placement standards and to include a section that requires a standard compliant civic address to be placed in order to receive their occupancy certificate. And so also some of the other things that we can do is educational outreach, as well as bylaw enforcement and procurement of standard compliant signage for all buildings located in the SLRD. So to supply all buildings in the SLRD with standardized signage at the cost of $28, which is the current cost to produce such signs, is $143,000 for existing buildings, and then an additional approximately $2,100 yearly for newly constructed buildings, just based on the amount of building permits we have received in the past few years. In addition to that, staff time and administrative costs associated with placing orders, distributing signs, enforcing compliance, creating and distributing educational materials should be considered. It should also be noted that property owners in the SLRD may choose to place their own custom sign, which, if it is standard compliant, it cannot be prohibited by the SLRD. And I also want to add a comment on the mapping. There was a concern that the online mapping doesn't match official Ministry of Transportation road names at times. But it should be noted that the online map is intended for reference purposes only. And this is stated clearly on the SLRD website for all users. Road names, data shown in the online map is integrated into the background image, which provides a reference map for the world and the context for the content that is being displayed. These background maps are created and edited and supplied collectively by Microsoft, Facebook, and Esri, and as such, they cannot be freely edited by staff. That said, when discrepancies are noted, ESRI is typically contacted by our department to request that a change be made. It is also important to note that the Slrd has always used Ministry of Transportation roads layer internally for any administrative or emergency mapping that we have to do. And that concludes the summary. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there any questions? Vivian?
Just for starters, I'm curious about when we ask for a correction with the group that's managing our map. Do we get it? There's a road change name, for example, or?
Yeah, so there have been a few instances where I did have to ask for an update just for the ease of use for online map users. I have not received any sort of comment back from them, but I have also checked back on the same roads later, and sometimes the road names would change. So they don't really update the person who requests a change, but they do seem to have their own process where they do review such requests and change the road names at times.
Any other questions? Yeah, Vivian?
I can keep going. This one is dear to me, especially after sort of the recent fires and emergencies we've had in the, I guess all the communities have had these, but we are very weak, I think, in Area B in terms of having this signage. And so I'm really interested in improving that situation. I like the idea of making, I think it's suggested early in your report, consider amending a building bylaw to require that a standard compliance sign is permanently affixed as a condition of issuance of new occupancy permits. I'd certainly make a resolution to that effect. And I like the wording that a standard compliance sign, and I also like the option of us providing that to them at a reasonable cost, whatever it is, but giving the flexibility that they can provide their own as long as they meet those sort of minimum standards. Either way is okay, but requiring the signage, I think, is pretty important. So I'll see if there's any interest in someone working on that resolution with me.
Tony, go ahead. You're muted, Tony.
I thought you might prefer me to be muted. First of all, I think it's really important that we have some kind of standard, some kind of requirement throughout the electoral areas that people have their address clearly displayed. I don't think we can get into the municipalities. I think the same is true for them, but I don't think we can meddle with what they do there. I think some places are Squamish, it's impossible to know where you are, what number you're at or anything. But so to come back to the electoral areas, I think we should have a requirement, a bylaw that states very clearly what is required. I'm sort of a little reluctant to get into a standard sign that we would produce or we would sell, or I'd rather just have a description that we have that they have to comply with. And the reason I say that is that you look at some numberings and the name of the house and things like that, and people like to do it and fit it in with the design of their home or the colors of their home, or and I don't think it matters too much whether it's black on white or white on green or yellow on red. It doesn't really matter too much what the colors are if they sort of fit the particular environment. What matters is that not if you're just driving up the road trying to find someone's house where you're going to dinner. That's nice if you can find that easily. But the key thing we should be focusing on is can an ambulance get there right now? Can an ambulance drive up that road and see number 1942 without any problem? And so I would be in favor of some kind of a motion that our staff to come up with a descriptor with a set of rules that people must follow. And then what would follow from that would be an education piece. And I think we would really need to make people sure that they understand that our main concern is emergency situations. And I don't think we get too much pushback from that. I think if we went ahead and said for emergency purposes, and now you must have an SLRD approved sign or an SLRD produced sign, I think we might get some pushback there. But I don't think if we just said your house number must be visible in such and such a way, like at the end, I like some of the wording in the TNRD one, where it has to be at the end of their driveway, or if their house is well lit, as some are in some, certainly in Britannia, Fairy Creek they are. If it's on the house, again, as long as you can see it, and some of them you can't see. Somebody puts a black number on a brown siding and it's tough to see at night. You can maybe see it during the daytime. So we just be very specific about the visibility and the requirement that it is clearly visible from the road, and leave it at that. That's the direction I would prefer to go.
Oh, I am the chair, so I can make my comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I spent a lot of years looking for addresses in emergency situations, and it's extremely difficult in a lot of cases. People put up numbers that you just cannot see. They may put them up and you can't see them, and then 5 years from now, the trees have all grown around them, you can't see anything. So there has to be, I think, a real plan in place, like the TNRD, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vivian, but they have the yellow, green signs, and they're very, very noticeable. And when you see them that they're all the same, then for emergency responders, the way they've got their signage done is really good. The other thing too is not only the color of the numbers, but the size of the numbers. Most people, they don't want to put big numbers on. They put 4-inch or something, and there should be maybe a minimum of 6 inches, something to that effect. But that is a really critical part, obviously, of any first responders. Is you got to know where you're going, because if the address is impossible to find, it just makes things worse. So, however we write that bylaw or add to it, it has to make sure that they're absolutely noticeable from the road, and they have to be a minimum of, I would say 6 inches, but they have to be noticeable from the road, and they have to be maintained. That's another thing. People put up nice numbers and then forget about them, and 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you have no idea where they are or what they are. So, thanks. Sal.
The other consideration is the actual street name on the sign. I don't know how many times, in the last number of years, we've been the only vehicle that on our side of the lake that's actually at the road, because any other permanent residents are farther down with their vehicles. So we've got a pretty steep driveway, so the vehicles stay up top. People walk down and knock on my door, say, "Where am I? I'm trying to find blah blah blah." So I think if we had the like we've already talked about, the good size sign, something that's visible and at the road, but if we also had the road name on it, I think would help a lot. Not only for people trying to find somebody, but also for the emergency services, so everybody's aware of what street that they're on.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Tony.
Yeah, I understand what Sal's. Yeah, I understand what Sal's saying, and there was a time when I lived in an area very similar to where Sal lives, by the sound of it. And there were no road signs anyway. You didn't know what, you just say, well, take the road that goes down to the church. It didn't have a name. Take the road that goes to the school. So the idea of having road signage up is really important, but I wouldn't like to see that in the same bylaw that's addressing the house numbers. If we're unless we're talking about doing a separate bylaw for each electoral area, because if you come into Furry Creek or you come into Britannia Beach, or those two areas in particular, the roads are well signed. There's arrows. You can find your way around there easily. If you know the name of the road you want, then it's easy to find. If you go into the upper Squamish Valley, that's not true. Although most of the roads, most of the roads are posted there, but it's harder to find your way around up there. So I think if we're looking at a bylaw to cover these two things, I think one for sure, the regarding the numbers of the homes, and then let's take a look at road signage and see what we need to do to address that problem. But I think that's a separate problem.
Vivian?
I agree they're separate problems, Director Rainbow, and road signs are the responsibility of the road guys. That should be MOTI, right? And I don't want to muddy. I think Anna's done a really good job here doing this footwork and providing this report. And I think just following the lead of the TNRD would be simple. And I realize there's some costs, but to me, this seems like a real regional service. Like if we can offer these address signs at a reasonable cost to people that don't want to make their own fancier sign, I think that would be a great service. I'm looking at the cost. That's another chat, but it can be reasonable. And I really appreciated getting all the information on the cost. Can I ask, when we talk about visual signs and printing, is that a company that's in the SLRD?
That's a company that's in Kelowna, and I haven't been able to find too many companies that would produce similar signs for municipalities or similar places. So Visual Signs is what TNRD is using.
And if TNRD are using them, then I know a really good signage company in Kamloops, but I don't know why TNRD wouldn't use a Kamloops up, but that's irrelevant. I just was hoping maybe they were in the SLRD, because that would be my first choice for any kind of contract. But at least you have a baseline cost and idea of what it should be. And I think, what were my other questions? I've got a whole list of them. We could work through the logistics of getting some of the signs out, like I see the cost for shipping and so on. And I'm understanding you were sort of planning an educational campaign around this anyway. Is that right?
I'm not aware whether we are or not.
Okay. So that's just something that comes up as part of this report. And that's fine. Okay. I'm certainly willing to make a resolution to amend the building bylaw to require a standard compliant sign.
There's other questions yet, Vivian.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, please.
Yeah,
I'll
go ahead, Tony and Kim.
Yeah, there's, regarding sign companies, there's a very good sign company in Squamish, which is within our regional district. And I am sure, I've seen some of the work they've done. They did the address signs for Ferry Creek when we had that done. They've done signs that we've used in parks and trails. So they do good work. And I would, if we go ahead with some kind of contract like this to produce signs, I would at least like them to have a chance at bidding on it. And I'm sure they would be able to show us samples of their work. It's good work. So I wouldn't want to go to Kelowna. And then with regard to the report, I agree, Anna, this is great. I think it's just what we were looking for. But with regard to producing signs at the cost of $142,000 throughout the district, I wouldn't be in favor of that. I think we should just be looking at establishing some standards and then saying to people, you've got a choice. You either go out and do your own and meet, as long as it meets these standards, or if you wish, you can order one through us. And I think we could probably get it set up so they order directly from the sign company. We wouldn't have to be the middle person. We could just say, if you don't want to do it yourself, send your details to XYZ sign company, and they will do it for you. I'm sure we could set something up like that. We've got enough work to
Kim,
do.
go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. So we do have the civic addressing bylaw, and it does already set standards for placement of signs, materials for signs, and sizing of signs. So it does require that each building place a civic address on their property. So we do already have that requirement. We require that the numbers be 6.5 cms in height, and that if an engineering grade reflective material is not used, then each number must be at least 15 centimeters in height and must contrast sharply with any background color. So we've got some pretty clear guidelines already. We also say that it must be visible from all directions on the street, must be between 1 and 3 meters above grade, and clear from vegetation or any other obstructions, and that numbers must be displayed as numbers, not text. So we've got a lot of regulations. So, we can also enforce against this as well. If people aren't displaying their civic addresses, we can do ticketing under our ticketing bylaw. What we don't have is any kind of requirement in our building bylaw where we can withhold a final building permit if no sign has been displayed. So that is certainly something that we can do. But if there are any changes to our existing civic addressing bylaw, it would be, if it's not adequate, it would be great for us to know if the EAD thinks that there should be actual changes to the civic addressing bylaw.
Thank you. My thought would be that when a person comes in to get their building permit, and maybe this already happens, but they're specifically, that should be one of the first things they're told is, this is the type of numbering sign you have to have, because obviously if you're building, you're going to have deliveries coming, so that address sign should go up right away. And so they should follow all of our regulations now. I don't like the idea of the ticketing part of it. Initially, I think it's more of a just getting people to get on board with it from a safety point of view. It's for their own benefit and the benefit of their families and whatnot. That their addresses are completely visible at all times. Now, when I say all times, you can maybe see a sign or an address in the daylight, but can you see it at night? And that's a really important thing, because a lot of the calls you attend are in the dark at night in terrible weather, and that's when it's really interesting trying to find someplace. So yeah, I think that needs to be brought forward immediately when they come in for the building permit. And like I say, maybe it already is, and if it is, that's a wonderful thing. Thanks, Vivian, and then Tony.
Maybe Director Mack or Chair Mack, do you mean when they come in for an occupancy permit? Because that would be, and I sort of see it suggested in the report, a bylaw compliance sign, which is already well defined and Director Needham has reviewed, be permanently affixed as a condition of an occupancy permit. That's on page 1 of the report, and I thought, perfect. That sort of gets at some of the newer buildings. In B, we don't have a lot of newer buildings, and I have a lot of guys that need signs up. That's evident, but sort of one thing at a time. I think this is a first good step for the newer buildings. Require the sign as a condition of an occupancy permit.
Tony?
Yeah, I think we should go through that addressing bylaw that we have line by line and see whether there are any adjustments or amendments that perhaps could be made. I think that might be step 1. Step 2 perhaps is we really need to get on a whatever you want to call it, a communications blitz, an education campaign or whatever, to let people know throughout the region that, yeah, these are our requirements and not everybody is meeting them. And it's really important that that we do this. So the question then would be, who's going to do that? Who are we asking? Who are we giving that task to? Are we giving that to Patricia? Are we giving it to Sarah as part of emergency services? Who? So we need to decide that, because that's going to be work for someone. That's not going to just happen by magic. And then somewhere further down the road, we do need to look at enforcement, at ticketing. If we go a year with talking to people and saying, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, and some people are still just not doing it, then there will become a time when we maybe need to ticket. Now, our current bylaw enforcement thing says it's complaints based. So does that mean we need a complaint for every single little driveway that doesn't have this? Or can we pass an additional sort of give direction to staff and say, anytime you're driving around and you see that there's not an adequate sign there, you talk to the bylaw officer and we get a ticket issued to those people right away. If we're not going to do that, if we're not going to enforce it, then we might as well quit right now. So, thank you.
Melanie? And then Kim.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. I just wanted to flag that the EADs and the rest of the elected officials' place for this would be making sure that there's sufficient funds in the civic addressing service area that we have established to make sure that staff can allocate time there. But it would be the CAO's role to determine which of the staff are going to be actioning whatever decisions that you would like to make. Thank you, Chair. And yes.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, Melanie, I wasn't suggesting that I would assign the work to anybody or we should assign the work. I'm just sort of recognizing that someone's going to have to do it. And I'm mentioning a couple of people knowing that they're already incredibly busy. So yeah, that if we want that work done, we have to recognize that, yeah, we can provide the money, but someone's still going to have to do it, and it's going to have an impact on workload in general.
Thank you.
Kim? And then Anna.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I was having a hard time unmuting there. just a couple of points of clarification. So in the SLRD, occupancy permits are the same as building permits, final building permits. So when we say something is final, that is considered the same as occupancy. So in terms of when this information could be passed along, it would be when someone applies for a building permit. And secondly, this is probably a good time for me to raise this, is that we were, as the planning department, hoping to do some public engagement this summer. Some of you may recall a few years ago, we did do an electoral area information page that we mailed out to residents in each electoral area. So it was like an 11 by 17 two-sided document that included a whole bunch of updates on rules and regulations of the SLRD, what's going on, current projects, did you know, things like that. So we informed people about things like, like the rules around nightly rentals. And we could add something in this as well that includes rules for civic addressing. Like, did you know that all houses are supposed to have a civic address sign, and these are the dimensions, and these are the sort of rules around it. So this is a public outreach piece that I think that we could include in that. And as we move forward, staff will be reaching out to each electoral area director to communicate about what they might want to see in terms of information and outreach to their constituents.
Very good, excellent. Yeah, I remember when we did that, and I think that's a very good way of, getting to talk to everybody and let them know what's going on. So yeah, very good. Anna, I missed you a while back.
I feel like my point was already discussed, but I guess I just wanted to add that I think our signage bylaw could definitely be more restrictive, particularly to improve visibility at night and for emergency vehicles and whatnot. So that could definitely use an update.
Very good, thank you for that. Sal.
Thank you. Just curious, what would be the process for us to review the that bylaw? Would it be at another EAD meeting? Would staff take recommendations right now, or how would we go about that? Because I think it would be good for the directors to review it.
Yeah, personally, I think that should come back to another meeting. Kristen, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I think there's a couple ways you could pass a resolution asking for staff to bring back amendments to that bylaw. I think they've heard a lot from you, and Kim can confirm this. I think they've heard you've given some direction on what you'd like to see. So that could perhaps be brought back, incorporating the comments that have already been made, or there could be a special dedicated time to provide input specifically on that bylaw. Thanks.
Okay, then I'd like to make a motion that staff take into account some of the conversations we've had today and bring back a report on some changes to the current bylaw, sign bylaw.
Vivian?
I can second that, and I appreciate what Kristen's saying. And I am, Director Needham, I absolutely love hearing about the fact that there might be a mail out to all the constituents in the electoral areas, because I know that will reach all my guys. They're certainly not popping onto the website to get their updates. I don't think they even see most of the newsletters. And I've been struggling with trying to communicate, particularly through the pandemic. I feel I haven't done a great job. And so the idea of these community information meetings is actually quite thrilling to me. And I think including the information about the signs and possibly the information about a service that we could provide at a reasonable cost for those signs, or connecting people to where they can get them, is just kind of going that extra step that I'd like to see us do as a service organization. So thank you very much. And yeah, with that, I'll just second Sal's motion.
Okay, moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Kristen?
Thanks, Chair. I wasn't sure if the committee also wanted to make a recommendation about the building bylaw amendment. The motion that was just passed was with respect to the civic addressing regulation, regulatory bylaw. Thanks.
Okay, does anybody have any comment on that? Vivian?
Did you mean to amend this now to make it a condition of occupancy or a building permit? Because we didn't make that decision at this meeting, right?
Yes, correct. If you wanted a building and bylaw amendment to be made, then you would send staff away to make those amendments and bring them back for your review.
That would be a very good idea.
Are you going to make that motion then, Vivian?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll second it.
Oh.
Kristen, go ahead.
Sorry, if I could just get some clarity on whether this is for new or for new and existing buildings, and how you want that to be considered. Thanks.
I think it's pretty easy to require for new buildings, but certainly difficult to implement for existing buildings. I don't think we'd want to require it. We just want to recommend it for existing buildings, but offer a service so that they can get up to standard. That's what I would think from B.
Yeah, I agree with that. Is that good enough, Kristen?
Would you like to put that direction about providing the service into a resolution?
Sure. Because I think that's definitely part of what we're trying to decide here. So should I go back to some of the wording here in Anna's report that I was reading before? Mandating standardized civic address signage by means of building regulation. We talked about that. So.
Vivian?
Yes.
Kim's got a comment here. Let's let her do that first.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm looking at my, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I'm thinking that the resolution might be something like that staff bring back an amendment to the building bylaw that requires that a civic address sign be posted as a condition of issuance of final building permit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Kristen, do we need to redo that resolution to add that in, or
Thanks, Chair. This is a second resolution that could be made.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay, moved by Tony, seconded by Vivian. You're okay, Sal? Okay. Move seconded, call the question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you.
Tara, does that get at staff doing some footwork on offering some signage as a service in future, if we kind of agree to that? Was that part of the previous decision? Just checking.
that was part of the previous resolution.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Sal, go ahead.
I'll move receipt of the information report.
Okay, I'll second that. Moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Now we move on to 5.3, direction request, electoral area C zoning bylaw amendments, Wedgewood's non-market affordable housing and market housing. And do we have, who's going to be with us on this one? Kim's here, I see.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We also have Ms. Mackay joining us for this one.
Okay.
Ms. Mackay, we haven't seen her for a long time. We can't see her now. Alex, where are you? There you are.
Hi.
Good to see you.
You as well.
Okay, are you ready to give us an update on where we're going here?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Chair. So this report is regarding a rezoning application for Wedgewood's Estates. It has three main components that I'll just walk through. So the first is a proposal to rezone Strata Lot 12 in the lower part of the existing subdivision. So that's off of Riverside Drive. And that's to allow for to allow for 10 non-market housing lots to be subdivided from that existing lot. The proposal there is 10 relatively small residential lots, which would be sold somewhere between $200,000 and $225,000 is kind of the estimated cost for the lot or for the lots at this point in time. And what the applicant is proposing is that 50% of that lot purchase price would be given back as a donation to the SLRD to fund parks and recreation programming in the area. They're also proposing a number
Can
of.
I just jump in, Alex?
Yes,
Can
absolutely.
I just jump in now before we get too far along? So one thing I would like to see is that money that comes back as an amenity, that goes to Area C for recreation and it could probably just go right into the existing Wedgewood's amenity line item that we have. Anyways, I would like it specifically mentioned that it goes to the Area C recreation amenity fund. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And yes, that is the intention, that it would go into the Area C Recreation Fund as opposed to the regional district as a whole. It will be focused on Area C. So just in addition to the relatively low purchase price for the lots, the applicant is proposing a number of cost control methods to ensure that the buildings that are built, the homes that are built on those lots are also affordable. So those are the creation of between 3 and 5 building plans that people that purchase the lots will be able to select from, as well as identifying a couple of builders who are able to build at a fixed cost. So in addition to them being built initially as a relatively affordable housing, the proposal is that those lots would be covenanted in perpetuity to ensure affordability into the future, and managed really similarly to the way that the Whistler Housing Authority is managed. So further details on that will come forward in if this application is to proceed. And as far as the initial delivery or bringing these forward to the public, what is proposed is that the developer would take on that initial work, and it would be allocated through a housing lottery, broken down so that 5 lots are allocated to those that reside in areas C and D of the SLRD, 2 lots for those residing in the RMOW, 2 lots for those residing in the village of Pemberton, and then 1 lot that can be allocated at the owner's discretion. So that's the first part of the proposal. The second part of the proposal is what is being termed phase 7 of the Wedgewood's estate development. And that is 12 strata lots, so 12 estate lots in the upper portion of the existing strata development, subdivided from strata lot 108. And those lots, in addition to being kind of regular market estate lots, what is proposed is there would be a covenant on them that would require a minimum of one auxiliary dwelling unit that's held back for long-term rental. So there's a bit of an affordable component there as well. It would require, it would ensure the delivery of 12 affordable rental units in Wedgewood's estates. And then the final component of this proposal, so this would be 22 additional lots beyond the currently permitted 108, so 130 lots total final build out for Wedgewood's estates. And the third piece is that the existing remainder lands on the west side of the highway would be donated to the SLRD for parkland. So those would be managed by the SLRD going forward. So I think I'll leave it at that. Those are the really kind of a high level overview of what's being proposed, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there any questions? Vivian.
Thank you. Thanks for your report, Alex McKay. I'm wondering about when you say there's not going to be any further build out. He is talking about a convenience store, which I thought was a pretty good idea, and possibly other services to try and make it a more self-contained neighborhood. So isn't that part of a further build out? But what you mean is, I mean, why not divide up another lot? Because they're pretty big lots the way they're sitting. So I like this idea in general. I'm just curious about that part.
Okay, thank you. So through the chair, the proposal, the developer is proposing that this be the final residential build out. I think that's a really good point. Thank you, Director Birch Jones. There are some elements of this proposal that are intended to make it a complete community. So in the current zoning, there are provisions for that convenience store kind of cafe building, but it's not allowed on common property. And so the proposal is that we would amend the zoning so that on the common property parcel that's immediately adjacent to the proposed affordable housing lots, that would become the location for that convenience store and cafe. So it would be really walkable for those that are living on those 10 lots. And the other piece of that, sorry, I'm just going through my report here. There's a couple of components. So one is that convenience store. I talked about the parkland donation. There is also an existing bus lay-by that's immediately adjacent to the proposed community housing lots. Now, the applicant is proposing holding back some funding so that that can be used to improve basically to put a bus shelter there or improve that lay-by in the future if that becomes the location for a transit stop. I did reach out to planning staff at BC Transit, and it's my understanding that they're currently evaluating this interregional transit service, and it's going to be a future decision whether there is a transit stop that's internal to Wedgewood Estates or it ends up on the highway, but those funds could be used in either case. And there's also one other component, which is staff is bringing forward this idea that maybe we want to amend the zoning in Wedgewood Estates to allow for childcare as a permitted use, which would potentially reduce vehicle trips in and out of the community, people going to Whistler for childcare or up to Pemberton. The actual uptake will depend on those that reside in the neighborhood and who brings that forward. But we'd like to make that a possibility in the CD1 zone. Thank you.
Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering about this anyway, but since you brought up childcare, I recall 4 or 5 years ago in the previous term, there was an application from the Waldorf School in Whistler to have a school site in Wedgewood. And I recall that we had an amendment to the RGS to allow for that, and it passed. And then Waldorf decided they didn't want to come anyway and found a new site in Whistler. So my question is, who owns that site? Is it still zoned as a school site? If so, could it be developed? Must it be a school, or could it be childcare? Or I don't know. What can you tell me about it?
I'll defer to Director Needham.
Yeah, through the chair, that's a good question. So yes, it's correct. Waldorf has decided not to build at this time. It is Crown land, and Waldorf has a long-term lease on that property. I think it would probably be quite possible to consider that site for childcare, but we would have to look into that further at the details of the zoning and the details of the lease that Waldorf has with the province and how that could possibly work.
So let me just continue with that. So if Waldorf decided tomorrow, we'd like to build a school at Wedgewood, they could? They could just go and do it now?
I don't have my zoning bylaw in front of me, but I'm quite certain they can, because we did amendments in the past several years ago to accommodate them. But because of their operational needs right now, they just opted to not actually build at this point in time. But I know the lease is with Waldorf, so whether that lease could be transferred to other users, that's something we're not certain of.
Interesting. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Vivian?
I'm sure I should know this, but it caught my eye that we would be providing a tax receipt for the value of the parkland. I'm pretty thrilled about the parkland, but I was just, can we do that? We do that, okay. And also, is there any kind of, are we taking on the management of the sort of more affordable housing? Like, I just see any future transactions, the SLRD will review and approve, minimize. I just think, isn't this sort of the work of a strata more than having that on the shoulders of the SLRD? But that's just a comment. I'm sure staff thought about that. Otherwise, I support this and I'm good with the recommendations in our agenda.
Do you want to comment on that, Kim?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the SLRD, of course, does not have a housing authority. And so typically in a place like Whistler, where they do have a housing authority, these sorts of transactions would be routed through a housing authority for oversight. But we do believe that these transactions, which is basically what they will be, it would be a transaction whenever one of those affordable housing properties is sold. There would need to be a process by which the SLRD has some oversight of the sale to ensure that our requirements for affordability and occupancy are being addressed. So we would likely route it through lawyers, through a basic checklist system, and that would be referred to us so that we could just check off a box and say, yes, this transaction works for us. And so we don't envision that it would take a lot of staff time, because we don't see these properties turning over very often at all.
Thank you.
That makes sense. I'm happy to move the two recommendations, that it be recommended to the regional board, etc. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so you're recommending option 1? Is that correct?
Yes, but I also saw Director DeMare's hand up, so maybe I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Just to what Vivian was saying, what is the process if we approve this? Does this go straight to the board, or will you be doing some work before it goes to the board?
Yeah, Kim,
Through
you
the chair,
want to,
it will go straight to the board.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
okay, so we're going to, Kristen, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure what the motion is. Option 1 in the report is just that give staff direction regarding further information required prior to the preparation of bylaws.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so, well,
Just withdraw that so we can have the proper wording.
Yeah. Melanie, how do you see this resolution going forward then to move this along? I saw your hand,
Thank you,
Tony.
Chair. I think Director Rainbow is going to put a suggested wording on the table, so I might wait for his contribution.
Tony, go ahead.
Melanie's a little further ahead of me than I was myself. What I do want to say is this: I don't want to ask staff to do any more work on this until we are sure that we have the board approval for the concept. We've been around this road before with another application at Wedgewoods, which was denied. I don't know what the dynamics were of that previous one. There was clearly some politics at play that maybe wasn't clearly articulated. I don't want to see staff spending hours doing work on this and then having the board turn it down. I think if it goes forward like this, it's pretty clear what the intent is. It's pretty clear the number of homes, the way it's going to be managed, and we either approve that or we don't. And if we approve it, then staff can spend the time they need to spend doing the bylaws. So my motion would be that it goes forward to the board in the same way as it's been presented to us today. And that at the board level, and I would make a motion at the board level, right? And it can be preferred option number one. The board gives staff direction to go ahead and prepare and do the bylaws. So that's my motion.
I'll second that. Yeah.
So
Go ahead, Kirsten.
So sorry, just to clarify. So this is just a resolution to refer this to the board?
Yes, and but to include in it the option that we're suggesting that staff be directed to produce the necessary bylaws.
Yeah, Melanie?
Yes, thank you, Chair. That's clear what's being recommended. Director Needham, is there further information that you require in order to draft those bylaws?
Unless there is information or additional content that the EAD would like to recommend, we can just move this forward, and I'm sure that we will collect more input when this goes to the board that will help us to prepare bylaws. I just wanted to add, though, that the site is on PA1 and childcare facility is not a permitted use. And so that is something that we could do a rezoning for at some point to allow childcare as a permitted use, but I just wanted to update the EAD because I've just received that information. Thank you.
Yeah, Vivian, go ahead.
Would you like a resolution to include consideration of zoning for childcare as something that we would like the staff to work on? Because that makes very good sense to me, and we know that the board will ask for that anyway.
Yeah, Melanie, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that we do have a motion on the floor. It's been moved. I don't think it's been seconded yet.
Russell seconded it.
Yeah, I
Russell seconded it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then that would either be a motion to amend the main motion, or it could be waited until that one is voted on, and then we could consider another motion.
Okay, well, let's vote on this and then we'll consider another motion. So it's moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. And now we could have, Tony, do you want to make another resolution about the childcare?
I want to second Vivian's one because I agree it's important.
Okay. So it's moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Sorry, Chair. can I just have that motion restated, please?
That the staff look into rezoning for, allow for childcare as part of their work in preparing this for the board presentation.
And I guess one thing, as I mentioned to Alex, I want that specifically about the Area C recreation. So
Yeah, I
I
think
want
that's
to make
in
sure
there.
that when that goes to the board. So I think it's already there, but
It is
just
there.
explain it. Anyways, thank you. So call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Yes. I heard an
Too late.
Everybody's okay?
I don't know. I
Vivian, could you-
see what Kristen says, and then I'll be okay. Will that?
Everything's okay? Oh,
Yes, thank you.
Kim's got her hand up.
Sorry, Chair, just to clarify, I heard the words that this be changed prior to going to the board. I think, so what, like, we were just envisioning that this report would go to the board as is. Could the resolution be something like that childcare be considered in this application as we proceed?
I'm totally happy with that.
Okay. Thank you.
So we already have a resolution that staff look into rezoning to allow for childcare. And that is a recommendation to the board. So I think the board can deal with that piece at the board table. Thanks.
Yeah, Sal, go ahead.
Yeah, I just got a comment. I'm really pleased that Wedgewood came back with their new proposal. This looks really good. I like it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I do. It's very nice. And like I had said to Melanie earlier this morning when we were talking, to get 307 acres of land donated to the regional district for parkland or whatever we decide to do with it, the bike trails that are already there and future ones, I mean, that's amazing because nobody gives away land anymore. Tony, go ahead.
Well, this is mostly forest right now. And, you know, I look at that and I think, boy, what could we do with that? This is not a community forest. This is not something where we're tied in with some sort of a logging company and so on. You know, we could do all kinds of things with that. We could go to a university and say, how would you like access to X number of acres so you can do some longitudinal studies of the effects of climate change on forests in the sort of not exactly the coastal region of BC. We could go to agricultural experts and say, what do you think is the potential for developing forest agriculture in our region? Here's 20 acres, 30 acres, whatever. Come and do some stuff and do some studies. We could do things that are just not being done in BC right now because not many people have access to this amount of forest land that they have control over. So I'm excited about it.
It's a wonderful thing. Thank you. So let's move on now to 5.4, which is a request for decision, Area C Wildfire Development Permit Area, first reading. Who's going to speak to that? Have we got Kim? Or...
Thank you, Chair. We have Director Needham staying and we have Ms. Dewar joining us.
Very good. Thank you. morning, Claire.
Good morning. My name is Claire Dewar. I'm a senior planner at the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I will provide a brief summary of the Area C Wildfire Protection Development Permit area that is being presented for consideration of first reading. And then I'm happy to take any questions from the board. So, as we know, in recent years, wildfires have caused significant personal, cultural, economic, and environmental loss in BC as well as the Slrd, and that with the effects of climate change being felt across the province, this trend is expected to continue unless sufficient wildfire mitigation and preparedness measures are put in place. Important to note that Electoral Area C is the only area within the Slrd not covered by a wildfire protection development permit area, and it has been the intention of staff to introduce one for some time. The wildfire protection development permit areas help reduce the risk to public safety, property, and forests from wildfires, and the objective is to ensure new developments in Electoral Area C are designed and constructed to minimize wildfire hazard and contribute to the fire safety of neighborhoods and communities. So as mentioned, the amendment bylaw is being presented for consideration of first reading. To just touch on briefly, the Local Government Act provides for the ability to designate areas for wildfire protection. We look to BC Fire Smart and the BC Building Code, and the recommendations within these documents are what we're now including for the guidelines in this development permit area. So we look at the non-combustion zone, zone 1, which is looking at fire resistant landscaping in that 1.5 to 10 meters area, and then zone 2, which looks at the 10 to 30 meters and specifically around tree spacing. So the DP guidelines will focus around these 3 areas, which match what the BC Fire Smart now includes. And also to note that it's recognized that non-combustible roofing is the most critical Fire Smart action to implement. Thus, all wildfire protection development permit area applications require the use of non-combustible roofing materials, as well as an option of implementing 2 or more of the other guidelines. When we look at application of this wildfire protection DPA, it will apply to all lands in Electoral Area C. There are some exemptions, including additions to existing buildings where the total area of the addition is less than 50 meters squared. There's some other exemptions, which I'm happy to go over if there are questions. For Wedgewood's estates in particular, all the wildfire protection measures will be required as opposed to in the rest of Electoral Area C. There's the option to choose 2 or more measures. And this approach is being proposed at Wedgewood's estates as it reflects most closely with what is currently required under the developer building scheme and covenants. And just wanted to note briefly too, as the Slrd does not have subdividing authority, so the subdivision aspects are proposed to be addressed through a new fire protection policy. So we would see that for subdivisions of 10 parcels or more, a fire protection plan could be required to be prepared by a qualified professional. And we're envisioning such plan could address safe access, evacuation routes, fire hydrant locations, fuel management, etc. And a couple other points I wanted to note was to tie into the work that Protective Services is doing around their existing Electoral Area C Community Wildfire Protection Plan specifically states to consider amending the OCP to include a wildfire hazard development permit area. And I also note that the Protective Services Department is in the process of preparing community wildfire resilience plans for Electoral Area C and D. And these plans state that 2 of the most powerful influences that legislation and planning can have on local wildfire risk is through wildfire hazard development permit areas and through open burning bylaws. So Amendment Bylaw 1741 directly addresses this opportunity and gap for Electoral Area C regarding wildfire protection development permit areas. And I'll leave it at that and happy to take any questions from the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions? Sal?
Yeah, I see that that area A, B, and D are missing some of the pieces that are in this new updated one, and it states that you're going to be looking at those areas and updating them also. Is that correct?
Through the chair, electoral area D is also being addressed right now as we have housekeeping amendments to the development permit areas ongoing and sort of simultaneous to this project. So that is being addressed for area D concurrently with area C. And it is the potential and sort of thinking of staff that area D would be could be updated through the area A could be updated through the area A OCP update that is being proposed in the near future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Everybody's good then? I would like to, can I move all three VATs at the same time? I'm looking at
Yes, you
Melanie.
can, Chair.
Okay, Kristen, thank you. Okay, well, I will make a motion to move all three VATs in 5.4.
I'll second that.
It?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I'll call a question. So moved and seconded, call a question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Now we go on to 5.5. Request for decision, zoning amendment bylaw number 1742, 2022, electoral area C, housekeeping amendments. And is somebody going to speak to this report? Is that clear
Yes,
again?
Chair, we have Ms. Mackay that's joining us for this one.
Oh, okay, very good. Hello again.
Hi.
So 5.5, you're just going to give us a brief rundown on what's planned?
Absolutely. So this is bylaw 1742, 2022. It's some housekeeping amendments to the Area C zoning bylaw, as well as some amendments to the agricultural provisions. And those are to bring the provisions that are in the bylaw into alignment with the current Agricultural Land Commission Act and regulations. So I'll just start by quickly going through the housekeeping amendments. So the first proposed amendment is to address fence height exemptions. Currently, the bylaw has fence height exemptions for parcels in the ALR, but only those that have farm class. And so recognizing that there may be parcels that are being actively farmed that don't have farm class yet and looking to support agriculture, those exemptions are now going to apply to all parcels within the ALR under this amendment bylaw. The second piece is regarding retaining walls. So the way that the current retaining wall provisions are written, you are allowed to go to the full retaining wall height of 2.5 meters anywhere except at the parcel line. And that's created some issues with people, and at least one case with someone building that full 2.5 meter height within inches of the parcel line. So in order to avoid that happening again, what staff are recommending is that within the entire parcel line setback area, the maximum height is 1.2 meters, and then you need to step back and you can continue going up from there. So that's regarding retaining walls. Then the third piece is regarding gross floor area provisions. And this is really just to make it a little bit more clear for both staff interpreting the bylaw and members of the public reading the bylaw that the exemptions regarding basements specifically and garages only apply to a principal residence. So you couldn't, for example, build a very large accessory building and add those exemptions onto it to increase your gross floor area. The second piece of this is that the bylaw currently only has a 10% exemption for unenclosed balconies and porches, et cetera. And we've heard from members of the public as well as architects and designers working in the region that that's very limiting in terms of housing forms and design solutions. So we're proposing that we go to a 20% exemption, which will allow for improved solutions to designs in Area C. The next piece is height limits. So there's many areas in which the Area C zoning bylaw currently doesn't have height limits for both residential uses and for accessory buildings. So I won't go through all of these individually, but basically we are introducing those height limits into all of the individual zones just to make it clear what those are for anyone using the bylaw. The last piece of the housekeeping amendment is just a small update for dwellings per parcel to make it clear that a specific subzone in the existing RR1 zone only allows for one single family residence and suite. The language is just a little bit unclear. So that's the housekeeping piece. And then with respect to the agricultural land reserve changes, those updates, they're twofold. So one is to do with cannabis production. So agricultural cannabis production is now a permitted use under the ALR use regulation. So we need to allow for it in our zoning. This is basically just adding that as a definition and then adding agricultural cannabis production as a permitted use to the agricultural zones in the bylaw. And then the second piece is the residential use provisions. So those were recently changed, brought into force on December 31st of last year. So we've made some minor updates to ensure that our bylaw is aligned with those changes. So the first being that temporary farm worker housing can only be considered now by way of a non-adhering residential use application. So making it clear that that doesn't come to the SLRD, it goes directly to the Land Commission for consideration. And then the second piece is that the bylaw currently allows a second residence for farm worker housing, different from temporary farm worker housing, but for farm worker housing or employee housing. The current bylaw is written so that that can be up to 180 square meters, but the use regulation only allows 90 square meters on parcels under 40 hectares and 186 rather over 40 hectares. So just making that change so that we're not offside with those regulations. And that's everything that we're proposing at this time. So any questions I'm happy to take. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. So same question, Kristen. Can I move all of that at one time? Vivian, go ahead. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair Mack, and thank you for the report. I was just curious about why you wanted to introduce the height restrictions. I can see a lot of value in sometimes building tall versus bigger footprint on the ground, or depending on the location, there might be some reason. I just wondered why we wanted to limit it. Help me understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. So through the chair, for clarity, there's kind of the height regulations are twofold. So some of them are introducing height regulations where there weren't any previously, but we are also updating height regulations. So for example, on ALR parcels, the farm residence is currently capped at 8 meters, which is really too low to allow for flexibility. So we've added an additional meter to that to allow for 3-story buildings. I think in general, you do want to have some sort of height regulation, or you can end up with very strange housing forms that are not necessarily appropriate in a rural area. I don't think you want to see like a 5-story house being constructed that's a super narrow footprint. But I would say that what is being proposed, there is enough room within those limits to be flexible in terms of design and to make it appropriate for the sites that they're being built on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I would like to move then all the, let me see, I got to count 1, 2, 3. It looks like there's 4 that's. So I would like to move all of them. And I'll have a seconder. Tony, thank you. So moved and seconded. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for that. Five 5.6 is information report 2022-2026 draft budgets. So would that be, hi Kim, would that be Suzanne?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. It's Director LaFrance. I'll admit her now.
Thank you. morning, Suzanne. You made it by 1 minute for the good morning part.
Good morning.
So you're going to give us an update on the information report for the 2022-2026 budgets?
Yeah, so
Thank you.
I'm Suzanne LaFrance, the Director of Finance, and we'll start by looking at the non-market change assessments really quickly. So that's on the first page of my report, which is page 83 of the agenda package. And so the assessment values for 2022 increased a total of 25% for the area A, B, C, D services. And of that, about 1% was due to non-market change. And there's also a little information graph on each inventory non-market change. So inventory is all of the new housing, new construction that was included in the assessments. And you can see the differences between each area's non-market change inventory, whereas Area C has quite a bit of new non-market change inventory for residential. Any questions on the non-market change before we leave that? Okay. And so this budget information is about the EAD services, which includes civic addressing, building inspection services, elections, UBCM, conference, emergency planning, and the electoral areas select services, as well as the electoral areas community park service. All in all, if you look at the requisition review, this is page 84 of the package, of the full agenda package, page 2 of my package. Civic addressing has no requisition. We are using all of the surplus reserve funds available. Building inspection does show a 3% increase in requisition. However, due to the increase in the assessment base, there is no increase for the residential tax rate. It actually decreased. And that's similar to the elections UBCM. There is a 4% increase, but the residential tax rate is decreasing in 2022, as well as the emergency planning requisition. This has the largest increase of 11.8%, but the tax rate per thousand is reduced. So we can go right to the civic addressing budget, and that is on page, we'll go to page 92 of the full agenda package. And this budget is the same as last time. We're using all of the available reserve funds in order to complete these additional special projects for civic addressing. And if we require more funds, we can requisition them in 2023, sorry, 2023. So if there's any questions on this budget, I'll take them now.
Suzanne, can you give your page number as well, because my HTML doesn't show the
okay.
The other page.
It's page 10 of my report.
Thank you.
Okay, Vivian, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Mack, and hi, Suzanne. I'm really grateful, Ms. LaFrance, that you are leading us through at a slightly slower pace and referencing page numbers, both in the package and in your report. That helps me immensely. I'm just wondering, we were just talking quite a bit about civic addressing and some of the potential costs of recommending signs on all of our residences and buildings in the electoral areas, and possibly offering a service. I mean, that's in the future, but we're thinking this budget, I think, has been zero since I got here. When you say it's easy, if we're doing more in civic, am I talking, when we're talking about signage, does it fit here? And did you just say it was easy to requisition some money from? Where does that come from? Like, explain that to me a little bit, please.
Civic addressing is actually the regulation of the numbers of buildings within the boundaries of A, B, C, and D. I don't know how it relates to signage, unfortunately.
Okay.
But
Yeah, thank you.
yeah. So, and with the requisition portion, that would be the requisition from taxation. So we're not sure what the current cost of the projects will be. So because this service has had no activity for so long, I'd rather get the actual cost before requisitioning taxation funds. And we do have some funding available in 2021 and 2022 in the budget, which is total of $24,220.
And if I could just ask another question in the general part, is it because there are so many more residents paying taxes that's compensating for the increases, and therefore we don't have to increase what we're asking people to pay? Am I following that?
Yeah, so with the assessment changes, there was quite a bit of non-market change, especially in Area C, and I think in Area D in a lesser extent. So that assessment base grew with inventory. So yes, it's been spread out now amongst more folios, so each residential tax rate actually decreased.
Excellent.
All right. Any other questions on civic addressing? And at this point, I'll just ask the committee if they want this budget to be approved now, or do you want to see it come back in the March meeting just for another review, which is totally fine. If you approve it now, I just will mention that in the notes next time and won't submit a new budget for review.
I'll move to accept it as is.
Second by Vivian. Yeah, and I totally agree with that too. Do you want a resolution to that effect, Kristen?
Yes, please, a resolution approving that budget, please. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll say.
Okay, moved and seconded, and call a question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will go to building inspection services, which we'll go to page 95 of the agenda, page 13 of the my package. And you'll see the full budget on this page for building inspection. And this was brought to the EAD committee in January. So I highlighted the items that significantly changed in this budget. So we did change the salaries amount. We upped the new building clerk position to 10.5 months in 2022 because we're very close to finishing that recruitment process. I also updated the salaries to the 3.9% CPI increase, and there's also the transfer to reserve on the next page following. So page 14 of my package, page 96, you'll see transfer to reserve is highlighted yellow, 266,608. That was just adjusted for those other increases in the salaries. So just slightly reduced to the transfer to reserve. And that leaves a lot of additional surplus reserve for the service to be used in future years. So the next page of that package is my agenda is 15, and the full agenda is page 97. Shows the 5-year span. And so with the additional person in 2023, the building clerk being 100% in the salaries, so you'll see a little bit of a change there. Salaries line is 50110. And normally there is a little bit of surplus carry forward, but of course I can't budget for a surplus carry forward. So the 2023 preliminary budget shows a 9.2% requisition increase. However, that most likely won't happen because there'll be some carry forward, most likely, of some unspent items or increased revenue. And the transfer to reserve, that was the 266,000, is mainly due to the amount of building permit fees we received in 2021 being a really outstanding high year. Any questions on the building inspection services budget for either the 2022 or the 5-year plan?
Nope, seeing none.
Okay,
Vivian?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Do each one.
Seconded by Sal. Moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much.
all right. I may take this one back if there is any large changes with the 2021 forecast figures or anything like that, but if there isn't anything, you won't see this budget, and I'll reflect that in the notes for March's meeting. All right, and we'll go to elections UBCM budget, and that budget is on page 18 of the information report and 100 of the full package. And this elections UBCM is at the same level as the budget is similar to what you've seen in the January meeting. This budget is for the elections that will take place later this year, and also for the UBCM convention and UBCM expenses. They're estimated at this time for the elections expense. It all depends on how many elections we are needing to finish for 2022. Not all areas have elections. Well, there's elections, but there's sometimes just one person and they automatically get, what's the word?
Claimed.
Yes, acclaimed. So any questions on the elections UBCM 2022 budget? All right, and the next page is the full 5-year plan. That's page 19 of the staff information report and page 101 of the full agenda package. And I've kept the requisition very smooth and flat in order to have enough funding for the next elections in 2026. Any questions on the 5-year plan? Okay, seeing none, this is also a service that most likely won't change for the 2021 forecast or the budget. So if the board so wishes, I mean, EAD committee.
I'll move to accept it.
Okay, moved by Sal, seconded by Vivian. Call a question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much.
All right.
On to the next.
The next budget is the emergency planning budget, and that budget starts on page 21 of the staff report and page 103 of the full agenda package. And I highlighted the areas in yellow that have significantly changed from the last time you viewed it in January meeting. So the main change for this budget is with the salaries and the time allocation revenue. So this emergency planning budget has some new positions included, which are the regional fire chief and just going through here. The new emergency program coordinator and the new part-time emergency management technician. So the new regional fire chief is in the budget for 6 months in 2022. The emergency program coordinator is in for 9 months, and the part-time emergency management technician is in for 6 months. And those are additions into the 50110 line, and that is on page. Oops, sorry. Lost my page. There we go. And that is on page 22 of the staff report and page 104 of the agenda package. So the new salaries line under 2022 is 313,940. But with that, there is a time allocation revenue now added. And you'll find that under the first page of the budget, page 21 of the staff report and page 103 of the agenda package. And that is 155,378. And that is time allocation from other services that these new staff members will be working on, including the current protective services director and the current staff. They'll all be more allocated to the services that they're working on. For example, the different fire departments, 911 services, and any regional planning that they are doing would be charged to general government and potentially planning as well. So that is the main change. And that will continue for the 5-year plan as well. Those salaries will be refunded via the services that they are working on through the time allocation revenue. And that is done through our online timesheets for the SLRD. And it includes salary amount plus benefits gets expensed out to the services that they worked at, and it becomes a revenue into the emergency planning budget. Sal, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, so the new, thank you, Director LaFrance. With the new fire chief, so if he's working with Furry Creek, he'll get charged out to the Furry Creek tax or fire department tax service, correct?
Yeah, so it'll go to planning if they're working on the development of those Furry Creek developments or the Britannia Beach developments, and it'll go to the Britannia Beach Fire Department when they're doing that specific fire department work. So it'll be, we'll have to figure out exactly what projects will go to which services, but it'll be divided out based on what they're working on during that time period.
Okay, so you also mentioned regional initiative. So the fire chief is doing some work holistically for the whole SLRD, then we'll all chip in, correct?
Yeah, so for say plans that affect the whole board, including the municipalities, we'll put those plans either to planning or to general government, wherever they fall. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That clears it up.
Any other questions?
And I also increased the placeholder for the EMBC reimbursements to 200,000. So for all of those tasks that we receive throughout the year, this is just an amount that allows us to have these expenses because our budget has to include an estimate for those EMBC tasks. So this budget shows a revenue and expense equally of 200,000, whereas in the past we were just placeholder. The placeholder was only 100,000. So that was the other update that I did. And there is a small transfer to emergency planning reserve as well for $20,000, and that does assist with building that emergency planning reserve to an appropriate minimum level according to the reserve guidelines policy, which is 2 months of operations. So when I looked at the operations, I did look at the salaries, but I also took the recovery out of those salaries when I did the estimate. Any other questions on this budget?
No, I don't see any.
Okay. And I most likely will take this budget back for any changes, but the EAD committee can approve it at this point. But if there's any changes, I will bring it back.
Vivian?
Motion to approve?
Okay, and Tony's gonna second it. Moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next budgets are the electoral areas select service budgets. And basically, these follow the BC Hydro PILT policy, whereas a portion of the BC Hydro payment in lieu of taxes received PILT funds get separated out to these areas for your granting service. And so this starts, we'll just briefly go through these. Starts on page 32 is the general select, which is all areas together and a smaller portion of the BC Hydro allocation. So that's page 32 of my package, page 114 of the agenda package. It's pretty straightforward, just the expenses for which are the grants are shown on line 51,000, and the revenues are the BC Hydro PILT and any interest, as well as the surplus carry forward for the previous year. And any questions on the general select budget? All right. And the 5-year plan is shown for the general select budget on page 33 of my package, page 115 of the full agenda package. And you'll notice in the year 2026, that is when the percent change happens for the BC Hydro PILT policy. So there is a slight increase for the general select to 11,640 under line item 51,000. So the PILT amount, sorry, the actual PILT revenue is under 43,000, just above, and that PILT amount is now 11,532. And that's all based on the policy.
Thanks, Director Mack. Page, here's something that really made me smile, which is amazing when I'm looking at a financial report on page 117, page 35 of your report, Suzanne. You have GILT, G-I-L-T in the left-hand column. And I think you mean PILT.
Left-hand column. I'm sorry. Trying to find that.
35.
Thanks, Suzanne. It's about 4 or 5 lines down on that page, and it's the grant in lieu of taxes abbreviation that you have there.
Oh, so that is spelled correctly.
I still can't find it, but yeah, PILT and GILT are interchangeable. So actually, most of the documentation from the province does say GILT, grants in lieu of taxes, but we've always called them payments in lieu of taxes.
Okay.
So it is interchangeable.
Don't feel guilty, Vivian.
I do have another question, and thanks. I just assumed that was a typo. When I'm looking across, this is all staying on page 35 of your report, because that's where my question is. We're dividing up the, oh man, which line? Dividing up the PILT payments across the line. Okay, it's line 43000, and I see that all the way across. That's just the PILT allocation. That doesn't apply to the IPPs in the other areas. Is that right? Or is that all of them divided up equally like that?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but the BC Hydro PILT amounts are separated based on that big policy that we just updated with the board.
Right.
So they are set amounts until 2026 when they become the new allocation, which then increases with the BC Hydro increase.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So I'm not sure if the EAD committee wants to go through all of these select services. They all are the BC Hydro. They're all basically the surplus carry forward, any interest revenue, the BC Hydro tilt allocation, and the total is the available grants. So we could potentially approve those. I don't see them changing.
I'd like to move that we approve this whole section.
Okay, seconded by Vivian. So moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
And for Kristen, I guess that is exhibits 2900 to 2904, all of those 5.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right, and the last but not least is the Electoral Areas Community Park Service. And that budget starts on page 47 of my package and page 129 of the full agenda. And basically this service will be divided amongst each area, as currently we can't requisition funding for projects as each area has such diverse different community parks that the taxation wouldn't work in tandem with everybody. So basically these services are all funded, all these expenses are funded via either the gas tax community works fund for the Scene Park, for example, or Area C amenity funds for the Anderson Lake dock work and things like that. So currently they're all funded via different funding granting pockets. Other than what is available in the service, which is the interest amount, which is very small. And so basically any kind of surplus gets used to cover off the admin fee and any legal that might happen. So there is an estimated legal amount of $1,724 in the 2022 budget for any kind of questions we need to propose to any legal counsel. So any questions on this Electoral Area Community Park Service budget for 2022? No?
I don't see any.
And the full 5-year plan is shown here, but of course, this doesn't take into account that this service will eventually end and be divided into 4 different areas.
Right.
Okay,
So if the EAD committee wishes to look at approving this budget, we can do that as well.
I move to approve.
okay, moved and seconded. Vivian seconds it. Moved and seconded. I call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
And that is the end of my presentation, but I can still take any questions or comments. And like I mentioned, I'll bring anything back to the board for the March, the EAD committee for the March meeting if there's any changes.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Excellent as usual. Thanks.
Did you have a question, Vivian? I saw your hand kind of.
I did. I did wonder. I just wanted to make sure I understood this as line 53200 time allocation from other services, Seton Park project. You with me?
Mm-hmm. So that is under the community park service.
It's, yeah, page 48 of your report. Page 130 in our agenda. And I just reading across it, do I understand that in 2021, for example, we budgeted $5,000 for that, but we wound up spending 982.
Oh, it's the next column beside that. So 982 is just the third quarter result.
Oh, right, of course.
I add these in because we don't have an official third quarter report, because at the time I build the third quarter, I'm actually just trying to build the budget. So it is 2,169 and 82 cents for 2021, and that comes out of your Area B Parks Fund.
Right. Okay.
And that is, I think, the Parks and Trails Coordinator working on the Seton Park project.
Yes, and we hope to spend a lot more money on that project in the near future. But
And
so
it's coming out of the Area B Parks Fund, as it can't be covered under gas tax fund.
right, and we have all that money set aside from the gas tax, but we'll get there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
All right.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Okay, do we want to, it's 12:30 now. Vivian, you look like you need a break, do you?
Dude.
Don't I look like that as well? Come on, I need a break.
No, you look very sharp there, Tony.
Oh, thank
But
you.
do we want to take a half-hour lunch break?
Sounds good. And I just want to thank Vivian for the transfer from Area B to Area D. That $5,000 is excellent. Thanks a lot, Vivian. But,
Very good. Okay, let's take. We'll see everybody back here at 1 o'clock.
okay,
It's all good.
Thank you.
good.
We'll pick up
Thank
that
you very
other
much.
conversation then. Bye.
Goodbye. can we start now, Kristen?
Yes,
well,
we
let's
can.
get this thing, let's get this going, and Tony can jump in when he gets here. So 5.7 is direction request, electoral area C, Divine Street tree removal. So I would move that we approve this, and I will use the necessary funds from Area C Select funds to deal with this. This is something that just came up kind of out of the blue. I didn't even know we owned this property, and I don't know if staff did or not, or forgot about it, but anyways, we do. So we need to take these particular trees down. So at this point in time, I'll just use Area C Select funds. So I'll move that amount that's requested, and Vivian's going to second that. Thank you.
But contingent on the fact that there's no nesting birds or anything in those trees.
Well, yeah, and toads and snakes that
There
are
may be-
just about.
They should do a
No,
check
no.
though before they take them down.
We'll make sure that all your little critters are fine. And if we find any, I'll put them in a box and send them over.
Okay, on
move
that
to
note,
second. Call the question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried.
Oh.
Yep. Up.
So sorry, Chair. So how much was that for? The estimate is for 1,600, but
Yes.
I'm not sure if you wanted to provide a little more than that, or how you wanted to deal with that.
Yeah, then just, make it up to $2,000. The quote, I believe, was for 1,600, but that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. So do we need to amend that resolution into that?
Was that what the resolution was for, up to 2,000?
Up to 2,000.
That's
yes.
what everybody was voting on? Is that what everybody was
Yeah,
voting on?
That's what we
Okay.
voted on.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
contingent on there not being Western screech owls there. Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, so is that contingent wording in there?
For,
I'm just,
Anybody, a responsible tree owner would do that beforehand, hopefully.
yeah, these
Okay,
are
so-
professional people that are doing it, so they know what they're doing. I don't think we need to go there. Anyways, thank you. And now we go to 6.1, which is Spud Valley Nordic. So last time I had made a resolution to put $3,000 towards their stolen trailer and equipment. And apparently staff has found out that they have had a lot of donations. They've got more than enough to replace everything. So that's wonderful. But what I'd like to do is rescind that particular motion, make another motion that $3,000 goes towards helping them find a secure place to store their trailer, so they don't have to worry about it being stolen again. So I'll make that motion. Yeah,
Second.
go ahead.
sorry, Chair, if I could have those as two separate motions, and
Okay.
with respect to the second one, if I could just ask now, so is that, would you like receipts provided, or is that just an outright grant of $3,000?
No,
Or is it
that's
up
just
to
an outright-
3,000? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll move the first motion.
Second.
Sal's gonna second it. Tony's gonna second it. Okay, thank you. And moved and second to call the question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. And then Tony's gonna second the second motion.
Right.
Vivian's gonna move it. So it's moved and seconded. Call the question. All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you.
Russell, can I just make a comment?
Yep, go right ahead.
Yeah, a couple of constituents are part of that organization that have property up in our valley. And I saw their Facebook post on the fundraiser they were doing. And I actually gave a little funding to that funding campaign that they had. That was a terrible thing that happened there. Just pretty sad. And yeah, it's good to see that the community stepped up and helped them out. And you also today.
And
Thank
the
you.
sad thing is, Sal, this kind of stuff goes on all over the place where people are stealing, you know, emergency equipment. Yeah, it's just when they get caught, they need to be dealt with accordingly, and that's the problem. That doesn't happen, but yeah, it's very sad when this kind of stuff goes on. But anyways, thanks for that. Correspondence for action: request for funding, Lillooet Rowing Club summer positions, and that would be Vivian.
That would be Area B, yes. And I've supported quite a few of the sports activities, particularly for children in Area B in Lillooet, and this is just another one. However, they are requesting $3,000, and what I would like to move is that there be $2,000 from Electoral B select funds towards the Lillooet Rowing Club. And that's just a straightforward grant, not up to or no receipts are required. So I'll move that.
Okay. Tony's going to second it. Do you have a question, Tony?
I'm puzzled. Where the heck do they row in Lillooet? Seriously.
You guys really need to get out and about. We have a magnificent lake, for starters, called Civic.
Oh, on the way. Oh, right. Okay.
They also do a lot of training, like in the rec center, off the water.
Oh.
And I don't know much more about that, but it's pretty beautiful to see them out on the lake. And there's lots of other places that they can row, but that's where they generally go.
Is this kind of 4s and 8s and pairs and all that kind of Olympic type rowing? Oh, wow.
They're doing it.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Fantastic. No, I had no idea that was happening in Lillooet.
Excellent. So that's been moved and seconded.
Yes.
And I'll call the question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Vivian. And now we go to 7.2, request for funding, Bridge River Valley Committee Association, Braylorn Community Church. Yes, Sal, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll have to declare a conflict of interest as my wife Debbie is on the board of directors and my daughter Kara is employed by the BRVCA.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Kristen, you could put Sal in the waiting room.
Sir. Oh,
I'll move this.
Yeah, and I'll second it.
And I'm in
Okay.
favor.
Very good. Moved and seconded. Call the question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you.
I'm readmitting Director Demare, Chair.
Thank you. You're back, Sal. Okay, decision on additional late business. I don't believe there is any. Late business, correspondence for action, request for funding, Lillooet Friendship Center Society Intercity Bus Program, all bus. That would be Vivian.
And again, I'd like to support this with a grant in aid of $1,000 from Area B select funds, please.
Second.
Good. Tony's going to second it. Thank you very much. Move, seconded, call the question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you. So now we're going to go into closed, Kristen.
yes.
So do you need a few minutes to change
Yes,
this over?
yes, yes, please. First, a motion to go into closed, and then I will turn off the live stream and we'll have a short recess. Thanks.
Okay, so moved by Tony, seconded by Sal. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carries.